Hey, what's up, Knight Rider fans? Alyssa Knight here with a brand new episode of KnighTV. If this is our first time meeting, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude. I'm Alyssa Knight. This channel is all about hacking and securing embedded systems. Now that the intros are out of the way, let's cue the rest of this intro. Today we have a very special guest. Gary Hayslip, a very dear friend of mine, is here. He's the Chief Information Security Officer for SoftBank, the world's largest venture capital fund. We're going to be talking about Gary's career from his start as the CISO for the city of San Diego all the way up until now as the CISO of SoftBank. And he's a published author. We're going to be talking about his CISO desk reference guide. So if this is what you're interested in, if you're trying to figure out how to move into a CISO role, if you just want to get to know Gary, this is an episode you don't want to miss. So sit back, relax, grab that cup of joe, and join me for a brand new episode of KnighTV. Ouch! You're a dear friend of mine. I'm really glad to have you on the show. Thank you for taking your time out to join us today. You've come a long way from the CISO of the city of San Diego. You're now the customer advisory board member for Box, CAB for Proofpoint, CAB for Cyber Reason, VP of Cyber Risk and Compliance for Weber. You were in a former life. You were co-founder, or currently the co-founder, of the CISO Desk Reference Guide, a published author. What happened? You and I were, I remember when we had lunch in San Diego. God, how long ago? Like 5 years ago, 6 years ago?
Like 6 years ago, I think.
Yeah, like what was the inflection? But you're like you're a big deal. Like what happens? Like you were a big deal back then, don't get me wrong, but like what was the inflection point? Was it Weber? Like what happened? It's like it happened overnight. You just blew up into this huge cybersecurity sensation.
I don't really think of myself as being a big, kind of person.
Well, you're very modest.
I really try to look at it as, just being a servant leader and just trying to look at, working with the community and who I can help, who I can mentor. Honestly, I'm blessed to be where I'm at. I work in a career field, in a community that I truly enjoy, that I truly love. There's not very many people that can go ahead and say they have a job that they love doing, that they're in a career field that they totally enjoy, the city of San Diego for me was kind of a turning point. I had done my time in the military, and I had done my time as
the Navy, right?
Yeah, and I had done my time as a CISO for the federal government for a number of years, as a CIO and as a CISO. And in that time, I had amazing mentors. And as I was wrapping up my MBA and working with a lot of cyber startups, my boss, I worked for a CIO for one of the largest Navy commands on the West Coast. And he just basically told me, he goes, "You've outgrown this place. You need to leave." He just told me, you don't need to be here for the next 20 or 30 years, just sitting in a cubby and just waiting to be a federal employee and retire. Because you're big. You need
he was looking out for you. It was kind of like, I love you, but leave.
And the thing about this is that, and to this day, the guy's name is Palmer Taskerud, and to this day, Palmer and I, he's since retired from the military, and, he's now enjoying retirement, and, we're still close friends, and I still periodically call and check in on him. And, but he was one of my first mentors that just said, and it is, you mentor and you lead and you teach and you help people move on, and you hope that they actually get farther than you, right. And you're okay with that, and so for me, I was finishing up my MBA, and it was funny. I was actually at an incubator, this incubator group with a whole bunch of cyber startups, and over a glass of beer and some fish tacos, I'm sitting there chatting, with somebody who was there, doing the networking thing, and the guy was actually the CIO for the city and was getting ready to retire, and there was a new one in his place, and they were looking for their first CISO, and he actually introduced me to the job, Wow. I applied, and doing the 6 to 8 weeks of waiting and waiting, and you finally find you got the job. And that's when we met, was about a year after I was in the job.
Yeah.
But I did 4 years there, and you know, smart cities and large metropolitan cities like that. I mean, I think the city of San Diego is like the seventh largest city in the United States. They're
Right.
really businesses, is what they are. I mean, the city of San Diego was it's a $5 billion business. I mean,
Yeah.
with
You did, so
10,
that's the way you looked at it. You
yeah,
didn't look at it as running running cybersecurity for the city. You looked at it as running cybersecurity for a very large company of
yeah. I mean,
disparate
it was,
networks and assets.
I had 40 different departments, 10,000 plus employees.
How
Some of
many
these employees,
nodes? Do you know that number?
yeah, it was like we had 86,000 nodes.
Oh my God.
And it was a mixture of everything from police cars and ambulances to HVAC systems, libraries, laptops. I mean, it was amazing, the stuff that you got a chance to try to figure out how to secure. And of course, when I got there was no budget. Nobody really understood what a CISO was or what I was supposed to do, and I had to learn, from scratch, that they don't have to listen to me. So you
Did
got,
they create the position for you? Like, did they
yeah, it was
create
it,
the
was- it was
role for
kind of
you?
it was kind of created, and I
That's
was selected
amazing.
for it, and it was interesting. I mean, I learned about the whole idea of getting cyber champions before articles were even written about that whole concept. I was figuring out how to do it. I was like, okay, these people I can work with, and doing projects and working with them, I can use them to help me get into other departments that didn't want to talk to me, as I was kind of building my program. And at the same time, I was still really, really active with startups. And so then I was like, well, hey, why can't the city's network be like an internal incubator for all of these startups? I get their technology for free to help protect my company. I mean, to help protect the city. And maybe we work out a deal in 18 to 24 months when it's time for us to actually sign a contract. I want an 80% discount, and the city can be a customer. And of course, the city attorneys were like, nobody's ever asked us that. And when they kind of looked at, they were like, well, there's nothing that says we can't do that. And so I ended up partnering with 5 startups, and that's how I started building my first security stack, at the city. It was a bunch of startups,
Oh
you
my
know,
God.
and then I got grants from DHS, and we just started building it from there, and it just happened to be 4 years later, as I was winding down, or actually I was burning out, one of those startups got acquired by Webroot. And Webroot, in the process of acquiring that startup, was doing due diligence, and they asked me a bunch of questions as they were taking a look at the startup, and and
Was
then
that Cyberflow?
yeah, yeah, and it was
Oh,
kind of funny. They were buying them, and then at RSA they were like, hey, by the way, we could use a CISO. And I was like, hey, by the way, I'm actually looking. How are you doing? And that's how I ended up, actually transitioning over to full private industry, but going to a vendor, and which was a whole different field.
oh
You
yeah.
know,
It's way different. Yeah.
because I'm still doing internal security and risk, but at the same time, now I'm working with marketing. Now I'm talking with customers. Now you're representing the company to the community. I mean, there's a bunch of different things there that I had never really even thought what was going to happen, and all of a sudden I'm in this security vendor, and I have to admit, it was interesting. We had times where the whole idea about brand, and the fact that you're producing, like, your company has 70% of the SMB space and 30% of the MSP space, and they've got like 6 or 7 different security solutions, and so you have to use those solutions in your stack, and so then I'm trying to figure out other security solutions that kind of alleviate and fix controls and stuff, because we were getting ISO certified. But if you're going to buy something, one of the things you want to buy happens to be from a company that's a competitor. And of course, marketing is going nuts that you're trying to buy something from a competitor. They don't care that you're trying to actually manage risk. and deal with some security controls and get us ISO certified. But they're just like, you're going to deal with a customer. Don't you understand? And I got baptized into managing a brand very, very quickly. And so
Wow.
it was interesting. I mean, I found right away there were certain, it didn't matter if I needed that technology. There were certain vendors I could not do business with because of the fact that they were direct competitors.
That's amazing. Even if it was a
Yeah.
more superior solution.
Yeah. And so, what I ended up doing was you end up using open source. You end up using, other companies, and so you put other different types of controls in place and you find ways to make it work. But they had a point. They had a point, and you really
Yeah. I guess
understand.
if that gets out, it's
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And the things that got really interesting there was just the fact that most organizations, if you have a breach and the CISO, he or she has busted their ass, for the last however long they've been there, and they've put a program in place and they've been building resiliency, but breaches happen as part of the life cycle of cybersecurity. You aren't, they just don't put a bullet in you and chuck your butt, out to the curb. You're given the benefit of the doubt. You're doing triage, you're cleaning up, and as long as you're not incompetent, it's one of those things that you learn from, you train your teams, and you keep moving forward. But if you're a security vendor and you have a breach, the fallout is pretty brutal.
oh yeah, sometimes unrecoverable. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a
because of
huge,
the
huge
hit
black
on
eye.
market share. Oh yeah, just it gets ugly. And so that was one of the things the whole time I was there. I mean, the 2.5 years I was at Weber, I was very cognizant of the fact that, we built resiliency in place. We built controls in place. I did a lot of walkabouts going to our offices all over the world and talking to the dev teams and making sure they understood what projects we were doing and what security was doing and why this stuff was important and why we had to implement it. And they, for the most part, embraced it, to protect the company, because it was majorly critical for us, and then of course, the company got acquired. So you have to do that whole part where you're doing the due diligence and you're helping them acquire the company, even though you're losing your job.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I was so sad when I saw that announcement you made. But I, it was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah,
I mean, you
yeah,
went from what is a smallish kind of cybersecurity vendor to not that. I mean, Webroot was pretty big, but I mean, still you went from a cybersecurity vendor to, oh my God, a massive holding company that started
yeah,
out as a software and grew to a huge telecom company,
yeah.
owns the world's largest technology-focused venture capital fund with over 100 billion in capital investments in technology, energy, and financial companies. SoftBank's massive, absolutely
Yeah.
massive. So,
And the thing about it is the way I ended up landing at SoftBank was I never told anybody this. It was really interesting. Um, when I left Weber in May, I didn't get hired until July. In that break in there, those couple of months in there, I was doing consulting. I was actually working for a consulting company in San Diego. And pretty much I was, helping other CISOs build out their strategic plans and, protect their companies. Man, I was actually having fun, but I was getting antsy. I wanted to get back in and working with a team and working with, a company. And in that time frame, a woman reached out. She was a recruiter for a little boutique, firm in London, and she was writing a blog about CISOs. And so I volunteered, helped her out. I volunteer and help people out all the time. So I helped her write her blog. And about 6 weeks later, she reached out and said, "Hey, we've got this opening. Would you be interested?" And I was the only person they interviewed. And
you're kidding me.
yeah,
Oh my
I was,
gosh. And that was for SoftBank.
and that was for SoftBank. That was for the Vision Fund. Yeah. And it
Oh
was
my God.
it was a ton of interviews, and I went back and forth to the Bay Area, you know and it was all about fit. They wanted to make sure that I was going to be a good fit with Will Bolivar, who's the CIO here. He builds this team that is very close knit. There's really tight relationships, and so he wanted to make sure somebody that he was bringing in like myself, who can do security, who can do audit, who can do risk, who's been a CIO before, who has no problem switching hats and getting his hands dirty and doing stuff. And that's what he was looking for. and he was that right up front. And I was looking for that. I was looking for that kind of challenge. I wanted to build out my team, and it's been interesting. I mean, the last 14 months have been a train ride,
I'm sure.
good
Well, I
and
mean,
bad.
that's a massive attack server. There, I remember when I went to Tokyo, I want to say it was like they owned a city. It was like right up there with kind of the size of NCC. Like SoftBank is one of
Yeah,
those companies where kind of like GE where or G is it yeah, GE where, if they file bankruptcy, we've got much bigger we've got much bigger problems. It's like if SoftBank goes away, there's a much bigger problem at hand, right? They're just
yeah.
massive.
And the thing about it is you got SoftBank Group in Tokyo, and they've got their security team and their CISO, and their CISO and I actually talk with each other back and forth.
Oh, I'm
And
sure you interface with him all the time.
and then part of my job besides doing cybersecurity is I also help do cyber due diligence when they're looking at new deals and they're looking at new companies. I
Okay,
talk
so
with
you're
a lot
not
of
you're not part of the M&A work or the investment fund or portfolio as far as the portfolio companies. You don't do any, you're strictly internally focused.
no, I do both.
Oh, you are? Okay, I misunderstood you.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
you
yeah.
you are involved not only in the
Well,
internal
what I
cybersecurity.
do is I do internal cybersecurity, and I help with audit. I help with risk, and then the deals teams when they are working with deals and talking with startups. There's a whole side of cyber due diligence that I help do.
Oh,
So I
okay,
also
okay. I'm sorry. I thought you
yeah
said you don't do cyber due
no
diligence.
no I do,
Oh,
and then I
wow.
also companies that are in the portfolio. There's like about 90 some companies that are in the portfolio. Sometimes their CISOs will reach out and we talk back and forth and we collaborate and help each other. So it's a
Gary,
very interesting job.
this is big, man. Like you're a big deal. This is huge. Oh my
And
God.
it's been I have to admit it's been interesting. I mean and so I mean as I was saying, I still live in San Diego, but I have an apartment up here in Palo Alto. Because I felt it was important to be up here during the week, to be part of the community. I actually moved all the memberships to the professional groups and stuff that I all up here, to the Bay Area, and I'm part of several of the CISO Slack channels up here. And the communities up here is really interesting. And I've just like I said, the last 14 months have just been amazing. And just visiting our offices all over the world, from Shanghai to
Oh
Tokyo.
yeah, I'm sure you've been racking up them out at least
Oh yeah,
pre-COVID. But I mean,
and
have
then
they required you to travel at all to Tokyo since the shelter in place orders?
now everything's pretty much. Well, the thing about it is for us, for the investment side of the house, we're 100% cloud. So we just told everybody, laptop, phone, go home, and it's still work as usual. And we're still doing projects, we're still doing deals, because we don't have anything on prem,
I
which is
think
very nice.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I'd love to get your input on this because I was just having this conversation with someone the other day. I feel like we in IT have just been so spoiled over the last couple decades, where we've kind of been groomed. We grew up in an industry that works from home. Where this shelter in place thing and working from home wasn't that much of a shock to our systems, for those who work in IT. I can't remember the last time I reported into an office. I mean, it
Yeah,
was a long time ago, where I had to do the 9 to 5 thing and rush hour. But I think I've worked from home for the last, 15 years. I mean, just like, so this wasn't that big of a change where it's like, okay, like you said, business as usual.
I mean, we actually started when we sent everybody home at the beginning of March. It was interesting because my boss and I got back from Tel Aviv and London at the beginning of January, and then I rolled over to RSA and I keynoted there and got a chance to meet all the friends and everybody kind of coming together, at RSA. But RSA this year was really really dicey because you were kind of seeing COVID on the horizon, and things were not going good. There wasn't a lot of people there. A lot of companies had pulled out, and when we got back from RSA, my boss and I were kind of talking, and we're like, and we had already done a big, massive project over the last year, moving everything to cloud. So we kind of like were ahead of the game, and we both were looking at each other, and we're like, ooh, thank God we got this stuff done. And we were just finishing up our IAM project. And it was like, and then within a matter of 2 weeks, everybody was home. Yeah,
Yeah,
everybody was back to
it
their places.
happened real fast.
Yeah,
It
it did.
was like,
It went real quick.
yeah, RSA was almost kind of eerie and just kind of walk. It was like you could tell that there was definitely something in there, no pun intended. But like it was different, and I remember being there and just kind of being like, well, I kind of want to just arrange all of my meetings at my hotel. Like I really wanted to stay as far away from the floor as I could.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
We had.
yet.
In fact, I was actually doing an Airbnb with about four other CISOs. So we were off site, and we came in for a couple of different events, and we came in to support, a couple of other, fellow friends who were giving talks, and otherwise that was about it. I mean, I don't even think I walked the floor this year,
Yeah,
just because of that.
what are your thoughts on this? I was weighing in on this whole discussion about whether or not things would ever return back to normal, but I really feel like this is going to be our new life now. I think it's next is going to be COVID-20, COVID-21. I mean, look at Asia. Like, I think masks are going to be a permanent part of our lives moving forward. I don't think this has anything I think this is not going to change. I think it's going to be a long time before anyone wants to hop on a plane and come to Las Vegas for a security conference.
Yeah.
Do you think this is going to permanently change the way we operate in, at least in cybersecurity? Do you think we're going to start going the ways of virtual conferences now? And
I mean, the thing about it is that people still love being able to get together and being able to spend time together. But I honestly, like you said, I don't see us. I don't think. I guess the way to put it is, I don't think people are going to feel safe coming together in large groups like Black Hat or DEF CON or RSA, probably for about another couple of years.
yeah, I think it's going to be a while. I really do.
Yeah, because even if they get a vaccine out, and it's a miracle, and they got a vaccine out in January, you still, just for the United States alone, you got to go ahead and get it out for 350 million people.
Yeah, and then there's going to be the people that aren't going to want to vaccinate because they're afraid of, what are the side effects? It's untested. You've got the conspiracy theorists who think that the whole thing isn't even real, or that it was created by 5G. Let's not go there. But I think it's going to I think it's going to radically change cybersecurity moving forward. Because I mean, like, you're right. I mean, today even if they come out with a vaccine, I mean, who's to say that it's not going to mutate?
It's easily a couple of years.
The next one, yeah.
Yeah, it's easily going to be a couple of years. And I think there's some good in it, because I mean, for the longest time, I mean, I've written articles about this, that hey, you will let certain C-suite members commute. They don't have to be here, on site. You'll let other people commute, but for some reason the CISO always has to be here. And I'm like, why? I mean, 9 times out of 10, the security team's already dispersed. I can guarantee you most of the equipment is not on-prem. The security stack is already in the cloud, or it's in other people's data centers. So why does the CISO have to be on site? They can go ahead and come in for meetings. And I think the good thing, one thing about COVID is that, companies are now getting more comfortable with the working from anywhere.
And it's about time. I mean,
and the thing about it is, and if you accept it, you actually open yourself up to more candidates.
I'm a big believer in you go where the talent is. I mean, we complain in the industry about this global talent shortage, yet those same people who are complaining are like, oh, we need to hire locally, or we need to relocate them, or, they need to come into the office those same people are complaining about this global talent shortage. We, with Gen Z, with the millennials, they don't want to come into an office every day. They don't want to work 9 to 5. They do their most creative work at nighttime. They do, I just feel like this whole mentality, if you think about it, and I was reading a book on this, it was created around the time of the Industrial Revolution. I mean, we need to adapt to the way that the current generation works. You know, and build our businesses around that. There's a lot of companies now. Was it who just recently announced? Was it Twitter? Someone just announced that employees can now permanently work from home. They're never going to require them to come back. I feel bad for Salesforce. They just built that freaking city in downtown San Francisco. You know, like now what are they going to fill their buildings up with? You know?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and the thing about this is, I mean, I just look at it as, I mean, as a CISO, now I have more opportunity, you know, for companies that are looking at, candidates. You can now look, and then and if you're building teams, now I don't have to go ahead and say I have to have somebody here. I'm not worried about that. Instead, I can look at someone and I'm just looking at their skill sets and their experience, and when you interview them, making sure that they fit, with the team. You basically have more options.
Right.
And
Yeah, exactly. The thing is that not all of the best talent is going to be located within 20 miles of your office. It's just the cold hard facts, and I think we need to adapt that understanding. So, one thing that I know, I'm sure my audience wants to know is what is it like being a CISO for the world's largest technology fund? I mean, how do you sleep at night? I mean, do you just knock yourself out with a handmaid every night? Like what is happening? Like that is a huge responsibility. That I don't think
yeah,
I could handle that.
I have to admit, it is an interesting job. I mean, I pretty much have deputized most of the IT team, because they're all interested in one thing or another that my security team's doing. The way we do it is that the security team and the IT team they're integrated together. So we're all kind of like one department, and we all work together. So there is this is one of the first times where I've ever seen it, where I've seen them. They tend to be apart and they have meetings together. No, we're all together. Before COVID, our desks were sitting next to each other, and we're going to meetings together, and we're doing lunch together, and we're working together. And I'm basically my boss's deputy, and that's what I'm saying is that so IT and InfoSec are intertwined, very close together. That's the way we operate.
So it's not
And
it's not the prototypical contentious relationship between
no,
IT and cybersecurity. It's you guys are very much attached at the hip. That
yeah,
says
and
a
we're
lot about
doing
your
it.
leadership. I mean,
And the
that's
thing about it is,
a
I
lot
mean,
about leadership.
we're doing a lot of work together. I find there's multiple times where I'm talking with my VP of apps or my VP of network architecture, where I'm pulling them in, and even though they report to a different director than me, we all are part of the same team, and I'm pulling them in on different projects, and I actually give them permissions on a lot of the things in my stack, because I trust them, and so we do projects together. And that's a lot of what it is that you kind of learn, you build out those relationships, those partnerships between the various teams, and people that you can go ahead and trust. Because I mean, when you've got an infrastructure like this with the kind of threat space that you're in, you've got to be able to go ahead and share that out and have people, for full coverage. I mean, you're not going to be. I got offices over in APAC. I got offices over, in the EU and the UK. I mean, plus here all over in the United States. You're not up 24/7. Sooner or later, you got to take a nap sometime. So you have to have people that you can go ahead and trust, where you have coverage. You've got to go ahead and automate where you can. And we do a lot of integration, with between the security stack and the IT stack and the SIM, with what we're building out with, a lot of the different platforms that we're using, the different technologies that we're using. We spend a lot of time figuring out because I won't buy anything that's a standalone. Anything that I'm purchasing better be able to integrate with everything else that I have, and it better be able to share data. It better be able to tie into our alert system and tie into our SIM. And so that's what I'm looking for. I mean, I'm looking for those kind of things to where if I can automate 40% of my stuff, that's great. And then the rest of it, we'll manage and we'll disperse, amongst the various teams. We'll roll with it. In fact, I was joking with a bunch of the IT teams that I was going to buy them deputy badges, because tell them I'm sucking you guys over to the dark side, but that's what I'm saying is that that's how you kind of deal with that stress, and just with that, the stuff that we're dealing with is, You don't hold it in. You don't stay inside a box. You make it visible. You put it out there. You speak to it. When I'm talking with the managing partners and the other directors in the various departments, I will give a monthly threat briefing on what we're dealing with and what's being blocked, the different projects and stuff we're working on and why, what risks we're currently managing, what audits we've just finished. Because I want them to be aware. They're more focused on making money, but at least they have a little bit more of awareness, of the technology piece that's supporting them.
What's the greatest threat to you? I mean, is it the inside employees clicking on a link in an email or an attachment? I mean, what is for you? Has that threat changed at all? I mean, is it? I mean, I once upon a time, maybe even for some organizations today, it's still email. But I mean, for you, is it something else?
Well, I mean, you got to remember. I mean, what's interesting for me and what's shifted in some ways is that when you go 100% SaaS, when you go full cloud, your security stack changes. Your security policies change. Your approach to security changes. You don't have things on-prem. You're not worried about your own data centers anymore because you don't have those. But security is still security. You've still got threats. You've still got issues. And the biggest thing, if you're in a company that's full 100% cloud, the easiest way to get in, I mean, hell, Verizon talks about it in their threat report. It's email. Just as you said, it's the easiest and quickest way. So I mean, and so I honestly, it's kind of funny. I mean, I look at my issues I had at Webroot. I look at my issues I had at the city of San Diego. I look at my issues, I had with the U.S. Navy. They're all very similar. They're all, you want to make sure that your employees don't click on things or get into things that they shouldn't. Or if they do, you've got visibility and you've got controls in place to where you can limit the blast radius to where it's within a specific area, where you can get alerts, you can, be able to go ahead, all right, we're going to take that, we're going to slick it, clear, bring last night's, backup, reload, all right, you've lost a day's worth of data, but you're back up and running. It's just stuff like that, you build that type of repetition into where it's like muscle memory, and in many ways, I mean, the threats are very similar. A lot of it is just scale. I'm in financial services. I've got specific types of data that is different than like when I was at the city of San Diego. The threat actors we're dealing with are probably a little different, but it's still, they're still using some of the same methods and some of the same issues to get in.
What was your first 90 days like? What was your first 90 days?
My first 90 days was like, holy shit, sorry.
It's okay. We're PG-13 here. It's okay. We're rated.
I think my first 90 days was, man, I should have asked for a hell of a lot more money.
That's always the case, right? Hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah, you're just like, man.
On salary.
But I mean, a lot of it was, they had different pieces of the stack in place. So I mean, it was doing an assessment, a kind of baseline where you're at, just seeing how deep the rabbit hole was going. It was spending a lot of time with the other business units and just really understanding how the Vision Fund works, and what the deals teams need, what's critical to them, what types of data that they're generating, what partners that we're connected to, that we share information with, and getting that visibility, and then looking at the technology we have and the things that we should have, policies that we needed to mature, and and I was prepping a lot of this because I knew that audits were coming. The thing about it is when you stand up an advisory, investment firm like that, they don't start auditing you right away. They kind of give you they kind of give you 12 to 18 months, and then boom, they show up, So, I mean, I get there in July, and by June of this year, I had gone through 8 audits, and
8 audits?
I had gone through 8 audits.
Regulatory audits.
Regulatory audits from Abu Dhabi and Singapore and Japan and the UK and the SEC. Oh, yeah.
Gary, I don't think there's enough money in the world, so don't worry about it.
And understand,
I don't think you need to
I'm
worry
not
about
the,
having asked for more money. They wouldn't have been able to afford you.
and the thing about it is, and understand I'm not the only person. There's a larger team that's at play, and I'm working with the compliance teams, and I'm working with internal audit, and I'm working with risk. But yeah, I mean, you're learning fast, and thank God I've got a community of other CISOs that I'm talking to, and especially a bunch of them that are in FinServ, that I can reach
Do
out
you
and
think
say,
that's
hey,
important? I mean, like,
oh yeah,
I mean,
oh yeah,
I'm a day trader. A lot of people don't know that, but I'm big into day trading. And one of the most successful things, the most successful traders are those that trade in a community. And so, I always wondered what your thoughts were on that. Like, do you think it's important to the success of a CISO that their success is predicated on having that sort of,
yeah.
that collegial kind of atmosphere?
Well, the thing that you run into is that you can be a really good CISO with the knowledge in your head. You build out a pretty good team, and if you got the right kind of people, but you're only going to go so far. Sooner or later, you're going to run into an issue or multiple issues where you just don't know. It's something new. You don't have knowledge on it. It's going to be something unique. And you can spend time and resources and try to figure it out. Or you could go ahead and tap into your community of other colleagues who maybe have done it before, and they can actually refer you to a vendor who they use to help them, or they can refer you, hey, oh yeah, we've done that. I had to write a policy on that. Here's a copy. That's what I'm saying is you need to have that kind of community because you're not always going to know everything. And
Yeah.
sometimes you just need to have that community to go ahead and have a beer or two with, or a whiskey or two if you're really having a bad day, and just be able to vent and just say, okay, this sucks. Let's gather myself, make sure my team's okay, and then let's start prepping for the next day.
And not just a community, but also a bookshelf full of your books.
But that's what I'm saying, and so and honestly, leading into that, that's why I wrote those books. The books actually started because I was writing articles for vets that were transitioning, trying to come into cyber, and I was trying to explain how they could do it and how they could get started. And then Bill Bonney and Matt Stamper came up, and they were chatting with me, and I remember Matt had said,
Two great people, by the way.
oh
I
yeah,
absolutely adore Matt and Bill.
and,
They're
and,
great people.
both of them are like brothers to me. And Matt's like, well, why don't you write a book? And I'm like, no, that's too much work. And I think it was Bill was like, well, why don't we write it together? And we're all three looking at each other as we're having a beer, and we're like, okay, And this was back in 2015, and that started it, and so the first book was written more for, kind of junior people that were coming in to be an assistant, or looking to be a CISO, their first manager, security manager job, or their first director job, or a deputy CISO. And we kind of wanted to explain that whole process and things that they were going to need to know. And so the book, the first book, the CISO Desk Reference Guide, Volume 1, it's written as a kind of like a roadmap, to help you along the way. And then as we wrote that one, then we decided to write volume 2, and volume 2 was the continuation of that journey. And volume 2 was kind of written as you're already in the position now, and now there's more senior level things that you need to know about building your team and recruiting people, and about doing information, about doing like incident response and building out a forensics capability, and so building out a strategic plan so you're planning 2 to 4 years out, and so that's where volume 2 come in, was and giving you that more in-depth, look, because we're looking at, okay, you're a security professional, you're stepping up into management. That's volume 1. Now, volume 2, you're going to be here a while. There's a lot more things you need to add to that toolbox as you're growing, and then I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, so you have so much knowledge on and have shepherded a lot of people into becoming a CISO. How does one know they're ready to transition into that role of, I'm done with the bash shell, I'm done with the interpreter shell, I'm ready to become a CISO? I mean, is it age? Is it like, when they're at that point in their career where they're like, okay, all I can do is get jobs as a CISO now. No one's going to take me seriously as a hacker. How do you know you're ready to be a CISO?
The thing about it is that it's tied into leading teams when you think about it. Okay, so you may be at an individual contributor level, but once you get to the point to where you're comfortable leading teams, you're comfortable working with teams, and you enjoy mentoring and training and solving problems and troubleshooting and building and doing stuff, and you get comfortable and you've not just done a team once, but maybe you've done a couple of teams, and so you're managing groups of people. That's where it's about ready to go and start looking at that path.
That when you're no longer seeking out white papers or ebooks on SQL injection or writing buffer overflows, when you're out there looking for material on being a better leader.
Yeah, and usually what ends up
servant leader.
Usually, and
reading Simon Sinek books versus Metasploit Unleashed.
Well, I mean, what ends up happening is that you may get those books, you're learning these skills, you're doing this stuff, you're part of a team, you're an individual contributor and you're kicking butt, and and then you get to a point where now all of a sudden you're in charge of a couple of people and you've been assigned a project and you're doing stuff together, and that was fun. You loved it, you had a blast, and then now the next thing you know, you're in charge of a larger team and you're reporting up, and you're enjoying it, and you start looking for leadership. You start looking for chances to go ahead and not just I want to be in charge, but I want to go ahead and lead and mentor and have an impact, be able to do something, grow something, build something. And along the way, the people that are working with me, I want to have a positive impact and help them, and to whatever they want to be. And I've known people that did 20 years and they just want to be an individual contributor. They like doing what they're doing, being part of a team, but they're not really interested in managing. Not everybody wants to go ahead and go the CISO route. Sometimes it's brutal. I mean, it's no joke. But you start getting to that level to where once you're at that level where you're managing and you're leading, and you're no longer rolling your sleeves up and working and doing the technical stuff now. Instead, you are directing people who are doing that for you. You're starting to get up to that level. And typically, it's usually like manager, director, and then CISO. But I've seen people bounce back and forth between director and CISO. There's really no difference. There's a lot of times it's the maturity of the company.
What's the part of Gary Hayslip that you think has really lended well to making you an effective CISO, an effective leader? Like, what is it about you that has helped be the impetus to so much of your success as a leader?
I mean, I think a lot for me comes from when I was in the military. I mean, I retired as a Navy Chief Petty Officer, and chiefs are trained. That's basically an E7. I was enlisted, I was an officer, but you're trained to go ahead and run departments, run divisions. And I mean, I've managed 200-300 people at a time, but you're trained to where these people are your responsibility. Not just at work, at home also. They're yours 24/7, and you take care of them. And you're there to go ahead and lead them. You're there to mentor them. You're there to go ahead and help them, with their issues, men, women, whatever the problems are, and not only do you get trained into that, and like, dealing with classes, but you get trained in that in experience and the different positions that you're in. And, and then the people above me are trained to go ahead and take care of me and Mike, and the people below me. And it's like, and so you're part of this process. You're part of this, this wonderful kind of evolving kind of an ecosystem of leadership and mentorship. And, so it was something that, that basically I grew up, into adulthood learning that, for 20 years in the military. And so when I, when I left the military coming over into private industry, I'm able to take the uniform off and leave a lot of that behind. But that whole mentality of how to look at the responsibility of wanting to lead and mentor and leave a legacy, leave people better, than than when you left them, you know, making sure that they're okay and that they have the skills and everything that they need to be successful. I mean, one of the best things for me is finding out that somebody that was on one of my teams just made director of security, or just got his first deputy. You know, she just got her first deputy CISO job. To me, that's like Christmas, you know, because I helped with that, and knowing that they're okay.
You like building. You like building future leaders. That's your that's your why. You know, in referring to Simon Sinek. So yeah, my brother-in-law is actually in the Navy, and we're actually staying in his home right now outside of San Diego. And it was interesting that you mentioned about, you know, taking care in the Navy, you know, taking care of people, not just on the job, but at home too. And that was one of the things that, and I'm going to massacre his title or whatever. I know he's a gunner's mate, but I want to say that I keep wanting to call it the person he reports to as commander, but I guess he's a chief or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, so one thing that was really surprising to me was that, you know, his chief calling him to, you know, because my brother-in-law Mike is going through some challenges, and you know, one of the things that was really surprising for me was seeing that chief call him at home and check up on him and see how he's doing, and caring about whether or not, you know, things were okay or not okay at home. And I think for me, like, you would be the perfect boss. I mean, like, for you to care about what's happening with those direct reports of yours, not just on the job, but also at home, is something that I've never enjoyed from a manager. You know, having a manager like, hey, you know, how are things in your home life? I understand you're going through some challenges right now. Like, I've never had a boss do that, you know? So, I mean, that to hear that from you. And one thing that I've always admired about you is you are the epitome of a John C. Maxwell book, or, you know, a Simon Sinek book, where you are, you know, you've always referred to yourself as somebody that can be a leader without having to stand out front, that you can follow from behind. And you know, I've always admired that about you as a leader. And so I think it's a very admirable quality. And so, but it just, you know, when you mentioned that was something that I thought was unique to the military, but because I've never seen it in private sector.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's, you know, I said, you know, that 20 years of my life was probably some of the hardest, but it was amazing. I mean, I went to 54 different countries, you know, 8 deployments, multiple combat tours, but it was an amazing time, you know, and I worked with just incredible professionals, you know, and so you kind of set the bar. And then when you come into private industry, you know, you're like, you know, I want to build teams like that. I want to build teams like that where the people that are in those teams care about each other, and they care about what they do, and they care about how they help their companies, you know, and that, you know, and you want to have an impact. You're just not there to go ahead and put in you know, because cybersecurity isn't 9 to 5, you know, cybersecurity is 24/7. You know, there is no light at the end of the tunnel. There's just a really long tunnel, you know, because, you know, cybersecurity is just
I've never heard it referred to that. It's a great analogy.
But, you know,
there is no light.
So,
it's just a really, really long tunnel.
Long tunnel, you know, and so it's one of those things that, you know, when you talk to young people that are looking at coming into security, you know, you make sure they understand, you know, hey, this is a long haul type job. You know, you're going to be continually educating yourself. You're going to be dealing with stress, because it is a stress-filled job. There is no end in sight, because as soon as you get done with one thing, there's something else, and there's something else. It's just, cyber is continuous. But if you love technology, if you love working on puzzles and troubleshooting and fixing things, if you love having an impact to an organization and actually knowing that your service and the work that you're doing is helping protect your company, you know, there's a lot of really good things about the field and what you do, you know, and it's, you know, and so you can serve and be a part of that, but you need to also manage yourself, manage self-care, manage your stress, you know, and if you're leading people, you need to go ahead and help them and watch them and make sure they don't burn out, you know.
If you know, it's good that you talked on because stress is a very big part of our job. You know, it ages us. People don't realize how much physical, how brutal physically stress is on the body. right? Like, stress manifests in so many different ways, health-wise. And I know we're coming to the last 5 minutes here, but one thing I would love is for anyone in our audience who would like advice from you on how they can start moving in that career path of being a CISO. What advice would you give them?
The best thing, one of the first things I always tell people is get involved in the community first. If you are, all right, you're doing a job and, you're kind of learning security, but you're not involved in the community. You're not, not just DEF CON or B-sides, but a lot of the professional organizations. You need to know who's in the local community around you. You need to be involved and start learning about, about the field, because cyber's a big umbrella with a whole bunch of different things underneath it, and you need to get involved. You need to be active, because the thing is you got to have that, not just that community, but that network. You're going to need that network as you start growing professionally. You can't do it by yourself. You're going to have peers that you can be able to reach out to and talk to. I can't count the number of peers who've helped me, and I've turned around and helped them. And I don't ask for anything except maybe a bottle of whiskey every once in a while. But otherwise than that, it's like, so one of the first things I would go ahead and tell them, and I've written articles about it and I've talked about it, is do an assessment on yourself, where you're at. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses, know what you know, knowledge-wise. Because once you start going down that path from a management, point of view, there's a lot of soft skills you're going to have to go ahead and be familiar with. So you might want to do some classes and start getting yourself ready, because it's more than just a tech job, and if you decide that's where you want to go, you better start volunteering for some leadership. You better start volunteering to go ahead and start working with teams and start managing people and to start, taking responsibility and be accountable for a project, be accountable, for things, because the stress from that of getting deliverables done on time and getting people to be able to work together and to be able to achieve something, you need to go ahead and feel that, because that's CISO 24/7. So you need to be comfortable with that. You need to know what that feels like. And having a community, having a network, having a group of peers as you're doing that you can reach out for advice. And the one thing I always tell people is as you build that community and you find people as mentors and you find people that you can work with, you better damn be able to go ahead and also be mentors to others. Just don't take, be willing to give, because that's how we get better.
Yeah, a pay it forward mentality. That's for sure. I'm always saying this: in order to defeat the adversary, we need to all be working together, not against each other. And there's so much, you see it on Twitter, you see it on LinkedIn. There's a lot of negative Nancy's out there. There's a lot of people who don't think certain individuals should not be a member of this community. We need to just drop that and start working together.
And
otherwise they're going to win.
Yeah, and the thing about it is there's a large group of us that are pushing on the diversity side, and because for me, I've never really cared of race, religion, sex, creed. I never really cared. To me, it was always about skill sets. It was always about whether you were an asshole or not. It was always about, did you know what you were doing? Can you make the team better? Can we work together? Is the way I've always looked at it. And my thing is that, I'm very big now on the diversity side. I'm working with vets. I'm very big on the neurodiversity side, having raised two amazing men, my two sons who, have autism, who are both now in the IT community, and so it's a big thing for me. We're all not the same, and we need everybody, because I can guarantee you, the adversaries that we deal with, the people that are bringing all these threats, they're not all one type. They're a mixture of everybody.
Sure,
it's business for them. They're going to take talent where they can get it so they can go ahead and make money.
Yeah.
We need to be doing the same. We need to go ahead and take that talent and run.
Yep, I agree. Well, I can't imagine a better way to end the show. And, I'm always saying, I'd give you the shirt off my back, Gary. You're a dear friend, respected colleague. It's an honor to have you as a friend. So thank you for being on the show today. and sharing your knowledge. For those of you who have not done so and you're interested in becoming a CISO, or you're a CISO and you want to know more and develop yourself further, definitely pick up a copy of Gary's book, the CISO Desk Reference Guide. Gary, how can they reach out to you? How can they find you if they want to connect with you and introduce themselves and be part of your circle?
Pretty much on LinkedIn and on Twitter. You can, you'll see me both. I'm very active on both. You can just reach out, and for the most part, I'm more than happy to go ahead and chat and help if I can.
Awesome, Gary. Well, thank you very much again for your time and being on the show today. It was an awesome hour spending it with you. We definitely have to have you back.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, and once a lot of this crap gets done, we'll definitely have to get together and have drinks to catch up.
I'd like that. We'll do that, especially knowing that you share some time in Northern California. So we'll definitely have to break some bread together. So thanks again, and we will see you in the next episode of Knight TV. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you.